Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious Podcast, where we're discussing one of the highlights of the year, the start of the college football season. And the guy whose favorite time of year it is joining me today, Scott, my co-founder, my brother, the best human on the earth who knows all things about sports, who's also started the season injured. Let's talk some sports. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's that time of year. We made it through the summer. It's college football season, where it's socially acceptable to sit on the couch for 14 hours, watch
I'm here
football.
for this. Or just leave it on for 14 hours a day in the background. Like, that's what we do in our house. Just like, what's happening with that game? Okay, there we go.
Yes, and hopefully you got all your chores and projects around the house done during summer.
Yeah, that's exactly during the highlight of the Olympics. That's what I was doing, chores.
Yes.
No, I was also sitting on the couch for 14 hours a day.
That's also a struggle. We were just
Means I'm not
preparing. It was like a preseason warm-up.
It means I'm not going to fit in my jeans this fall, but due to the fact that we're both starting with like elbow injuries, what did you pull? What am I doing? What am I hurting? Maybe because we tried too hard to make up between the Olympics and the NFL season and football season.
Too many chores, perhaps.
Perhaps too many chores.
We're both starting it's not a great way to start the season. We're both starting injured.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling you I have bicep tendonitis and got a cortisone shot yesterday. So
Does that mean we're doing too many bicep curls?
I don't think you can ever do too many bicep curls.
It's maybe, yeah, maybe.
Not enough, maybe.
Was it the shake weight?
I have two. Yeah. All the Olympics was shake weight. Might have done it.
Oh, you're just giving me words of advice. We're both going to be walking around in our compression arm sleeves. But hey, I thought it was from the computer, so that makes me feel better that maybe I'm actually doing it to myself at the gym instead.
Well, at least you both look athletic with arm sleeves on.
Yeah, the athletic or old, one of the two.
Yeah, one of those two.
Okay, well, moving on to the football season, we're so excited for football. We are going to talk about so many pieces. Let's start off with, we covered this in last week's podcast, but the two big topics, or there's three big topics I think we've kind of outlined for the college season, football season. Two of them, the expanded playoffs and the whole realignment of conferences, are the two big conversation starters. We did so much so that we did last week's podcast all about that. So if you want to be able to talk a little extra about college football, we break it down in last week's podcast. Wow. Go back and check that one out. Give us a really like a 101. So as we talk through it, everyone's all on the same page for conference realignment and expansion playoffs.
Well, a brief rundown for you. This year, there's so many different teams in different conferences with conference realignment, mostly due to it's all about the money. So they threw the student athletes welfare kind of out the window. There's teams traveling from West Coast to East Coast every week. It'll be very interesting. Most likely the college you attended is being affected by conference realignment.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
It's unlike anything we've ever seen. So it'll be probably one of the most viewed college football seasons ever because you have new fan bases with watching different conferences. And then the 12-team playoff, it used to be a 4-team playoff with 4 teams in the semifinal and then the 2 teams advance to the national championship. So we have 12 teams making the playoffs, which opens up the doors for so many different colleges and fan bases to have a chance to win a national championship.
It was funny when you were talking about, flying East Coast to West Coast for some conferences. You know what Hawaii is saying? Hey, hold my beer. We've been doing this forever, so get used to it.
Yeah, Hawaii has no sympathy for USC flying to Pennsylvania.
Nope.
No.
Not at all. Okay, so the other topic we want to talk about, that's conference realignment, expanded playoffs, right? So those are the two things. If you want more of a deeper dive, go back to last week's podcast. We're not going to cover too much of that today, but we will be talking about it. I think the other big thing, as I read through our notes and what we were talking about and just doing some research, is really name, image, likeness. Now, we know that was a game changer when it was introduced 2 seasons ago, and it is a full-on hot mess right now. This could be the last season that we see teams, universities not pay their players directly.
Name, image, likeness is the hottest topic in college football. It's essentially become the pros at this point. You've got kids being offered hundreds of thousands of dollars just to transfer to a different school. All kinds of tampering, all kinds of deals underneath the table. So it has become professional, and we see that with the conference realignment with travel.
Right. And so
The,
to go back, universities cannot pay the student athlete directly, but there are all different ways around that, right? There's so many ways around paying these players that it doesn't have to be directly from the university. They've figured it out. Most universities are pretty connected with their community.
yes, through different businesses or what they're called collectives, which is everyone throws money in a big pot, if you will, and it's distributed to the athletes. And then you even have companies like Mogul, which we had their
CEO, yeah, we had Aiden
CEO
on.
on,
Yep.
and they have companies that were player or athletes can sign up with that company, and they'll find you deals and get you deals and give you money. So there's so many different ways to get paid now, and we're seeing the insane amounts of money these kids are making, 18, 19, 20 years old.
Well, speaking of insane amounts of money,
Mhm.
Ohio State was obviously really pissed that their longtime rival, Michigan, won last year. And they've gone out and spent $20 million to keep players.
They have. So last year, Michigan went undefeated, won the national championship. All their players left, got drafted. Their coach, Jim Harbaugh, went to the Chargers. So Ohio State saw this as an opportunity to flex their muscles put their money where their mouth is and pony up to keep guys from going to the NFL and paying them an insane amount of money. And they're estimating about $20 million.
That's crazy.
So Ohio State set the bar extremely high. Um, if they don't win the national championship, it'll probably be looked at as a colossal failure, I would assume.
Well, but we all know, like from watching sports for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
money doesn't necessarily win championships. You can bring talent to a team, but unless there's chemistry, you have teams. I'm thinking of like the Marlins when they won the World Series, right? They're not making overall, I mean, perspective, right? But they're not spending a ton of money compared to 300 million the Mets are playing. They're just a bunch of people who want to get together and the guys all have a great time and there's great chemistry and that vibe is so much stronger. And granted, that's baseball versus football, and I get all those
Mm-hmm.
things, but money doesn't always buy championships.
Rarely does it ever. I think we've spoken in the past about baseball where like the top 3 or 4 money teams haven't won the World Series in 30, 40 years. And take that into a college locker room where you have 18, 19-year-old kids, some are making $1 million, then you have a walk-on who's making nothing. And how does that affect the locker room? Do people even care about their team or they just want their own stats? This is way more of a, I don't know, is a chemistry project? Is that, I don't know if that's
Yeah, I think this sounds like a science project.
a science, social engineering project to see how it affects locker rooms with, the disparity in money is wild in college. So we'll see how, money doesn't buy you championships. So we'll see how teams like Ohio State, and there's so many other teams that are paying crazy amounts of money.
That's right. Well, so it was going from, Jim Harbaugh left Michigan, obviously, to go to the Chargers. We have Ohio State paying people a ton of money. The other name that we hear that is synonymous with college football who is gone from coaching is Nick Saban. Nick Saban has been the longtime head coach, won 7 championships with Alabama. I mean, he owns the Mercedes dealership in Tuscaloosa, like all those things. What is Nick Saban like? Did he just disappear? Where's Nick Saban ending up?
I'll say there was a collective sigh around the entire country with college football coaches once Nick suddenly announced his retirement. Nobody saw it coming. So in a way, it feels like it's super wide open now.
Mm-hmm.
With him out of the picture. Everyone feels like they might have a chance. So while he won't be on the sidelines necessarily this season, he will be around the game. He's actually joined ESPN's College Game Day as a full-time analyst.
Interesting. So for those of you who don't watch College Game Day, it's the Saturday morning cartoons of most people who like college football. Saturday morning, ESPN College Game Day happens on campus at a big game, typically. And we have Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit, who used to play for Ohio State, and Lee Corso, longtime head coach. Corso's getting up in, I think I just read he was 88.
Yeah,
and so is Saban going to step in for Corso, you think?
That remains to be seen. I know Coach Corso's getting up there in age, so typically they'll only bring him out for a few segments, usually the picks and things like that. So his role has become more limited as he's gone along, but he's still going strong. We'll see what Nick will do. He is extremely smart when watching film, and I think he'll be able to break the game down for just like the common folk that don't necessarily understand what's going on X's and
Mhm.
O's. He's very good at, pointing things out and putting it in layman's terms. So I think that'll be more of his role.
I always say, like, the really smart people are the ones who can break it down so a
Mhm.
second grader can understand it. It's incredible. Well, and game day's fun because you have Jess Sims, who's a Peloton instructor, who is one of the highlights of the game. They always do a you had one job, and it's all sports bloopers of people really screwing up. The picks at the end are where they bring in a celebrity guest and they pick the games that day, the winners of the games that day, and they all go against each other, and the celebrity guest also picks. So there's a fun way if you're looking to get a little into college football, turn that on Saturday mornings and check it out. ESPN always does great jobs with telling the story too, right? They do such a
Mhm.
phenomenal job with that. So you get a little bit of everything. So highly recommend if you want to get into college football, take a look at College Game Day. It's going to give you a great perspective on what's happening. Going from Nick Saban, where I'm going to kind of actually, you know what? I do have one. My favorite Nick Saban story, and I'm blanking on his wife's name. It starts with an M.
Miss Terry.
Miss Terry. Thank you. Anytime he would get in trouble and she was mad at like what he said in the media, or if he disrespected someone or yelled at someone, she would make him run on the treadmill.
Miss Terry doesn't play around. I think everyone around college football knows who runs that household. It's not Nick.
It's Miss Terry.
So you make Miss Terry mad, that's a bad recipe.
Do you
Happy
think?
wife, happy life.
I hope that Miss Terry makes a cameo on College Game Day.
I assume she will, and I assume that she's happy Nick's doing this because he would probably drive her crazy if he was just sitting at home.
He'd be running 45 miles a day on the treadmill.
Yeah, he'd get in really good shape.
I love it. Okay, so we went from Nick Saban. I do want to talk about, and we can spin this into my next thought on name, image, likeness. But I want to talk.
Mhm.
We still have Deion Sanders is back at Colorado. His son is the top name, image, likeness earner. I should say his one son, Shador, who is quarterback for Colorado. He's back. Talk to me about this name, image, likeness earning. Talk to me a little bit about Deion. What are we looking for on that one at all?
Guess we'll start with Coach Prime.
Mm-hmm.
He's in year 2 at Colorado. As you know, they started out 4-0 last year, and then it kind of just went downhill from there. It's tough to build a program in a year or two. That's why programs like Alabama, Georgia, like those, Ohio State, they have so many years of recruiting top 5 players, and they have top 5 players all around the field in their depth charts. To only have a year or two to get your program where you want, it's nearly impossible. But Coach Prime's always going to bring the attention. So, I mean, he'll tell you they're going to be very good. It remains to be seen how many holes they can fill. They had a lot of holes last year. So it'll be interesting to see it's also another social experiment. How quickly can you flip around a roster?
Yeah, how quickly can you make things happen?
Because and they're going to a different conference as well. So
that's right. Tell me which one they're going. I don't have my list up.
As we spoke about, it's Big 12.
Big 12.
Going back to the Big 12, which they were in originally.
Okay. So
and there's no level of, they put the expectations high on themselves they actually have the top 2 NIL earners in the country. Yeah. So Shador is the quarterback, and then Travis Hunter, wide receiver / defensive back. He's number 2. So they don't shy away from the spotlight.
They know that Coach Prime is a media genius, and they're going to jump on board knowing that he's going to support these guys doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. He's all for players getting out there and being on social media and, taking advantage of every opportunity they can to make money.
But what I do love about him is he runs a tight ship, at least that we've seen videos of everything we've heard of him. He runs a tight ship. He takes no BS. And he tells, I remember him telling his players, if you're here because you think that college football is an ATM, you need to go do something else. This is not where we do that. We're here to play football.
He is while he's new school in his beliefs and thoughts off the field, on the field and at practice, he's very old school in that regard.
Was it last year he was at practice? They were going to insert big school here. I can't remember. But they were walking around pushing speakers, playing really, really loud music around practice because they knew that the crowd was going to be so loud when they went to take on, I can't remember who they were playing. They were going to a big stadium with intense football fans, and they were walking around football practice and pushing giant speakers. The coaches were after the kids while they practiced because it was like, well, you need to get used to the noise.
Yeah, I mean, all these college football stadiums, the atmospheres are always incredible. So coaches are constantly doing that, trying to get their players ready, which rarely ever works.
So I should just be walking around with a set of podcast headphones on all the time.
if you want to get ready for a loud stadium, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered college game day. We've talked a little bit about, I would say, talk to me about Arch Manning. So Arch Manning, if you don't know, is the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning, son of their quote unquote regular brother, Cooper, who's just a partner in a law firm.
Mm-hmm.
He could be the fourth generation of Manning, third generation of Manning, third generation of Manning in the NFL. He's at Texas. He didn't play last year. So talk to us. Are we going to see him this year? Like, is Arch going to be allowed out? Does he have a curfew? What's going on here?
Well, first we'll start off. He is number 3 on the NIL list for money this year. And like you said, he didn't even really play last year. He is the backup going into the season. He's behind Quinn Ewers, who's number 4 on the NIL list. So Colorado and Texas well represented there. I have a theory. It's just my theory.
I like your theories.
With college football, you have to play 3 years before you can go to the NFL draft. Arch has chosen to stay at Texas despite not being the starter, where he could have gotten a crazy amount of money to probably go play anywhere. And I think that is because if you start for 3 years in college football, they'll build you up and then they'll tear you down. And especially with his last name, the expectations would be
right. He's a target.
Otherworldly. I mean, it would be impossible for him to handle. So I think they're okay with him maybe sitting the first 2 years. And then year 3, when he can come out after that year, he'll start then. He'll have a lot of experience with the team. And then that way there's minimal media disruptions and expectations placed on him.
Interesting. So basically he can excel for 1 year.
Yeah.
Hopefully not get injured. Hopefully not get injured and then make the jump to the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. They're being very patient. They're very calculated with where he went to school, his recruiting. So I think this is the plan they've laid out for him.
Very brawny.
And hopefully Quinn, if Quinn unfortunately gets hurt or something, he can step in and play.
Yeah, that's very Bronny James of them, right? Like really calculated on how we're going to make this work. Because, I mean, but it fuels the whole dynasty when it really comes down to it, right? You have 3 generations to play in the NFL. And like that's a pretty incredible feat. As can't think of anybody who's had 3 generations. 2, but not 3.
We're getting a lot of 2 generations now with like players we watched growing up. Their sons are now in the league, so that's makes us feel a little old. But as far as 3 generations, I can't necessarily think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah, me neither. Interesting.
At a top tier position like quarterback, no.
Right. What else do you want to share with us as we start to wrap this up? Keep this a brief, welcome to the college football season. I know we'll cover it a lot at lastnightsgame.com and on social throughout the season, and obviously here on the podcast. What's something you want to take away from it? Give us a takeaway.
Can we just go through 2 real quick?
Yes, please.
We can kind of start with the championship odds. I know these could vary based on, what's going on. And it's a good conversation starter because with college football, someone who went to college there maybe, or they're from that city, that state. It's an easy conversation starter. Like that's kind of what we do here. So, I mean, we have the Georgia Bulldogs, which they're always perennial top number 1. And with Nick Saban gone, they kind of feel like they're going to run the SEC. Ohio State, who spent, $20 million on NIL. Oregon Ducks, who are joining the Big Ten from the Pac-12. And they have a very stacked squad up there in Oregon. So I think
they have Nike. So they have the coolest uniforms.
And unlimited NIL there as well. So those are kind of the top 3. And then Texas is joining the SEC, so that'll be interesting. And then we'll see how Alabama, they're kind of like 5th or 6th at this point.
Interesting. It'll be interesting because Texas, it's the first year they've shifted to SEC, which is known as really a big power football conference. And so that'll be interesting to see how they pull that off.
And with the 12-team playoff, you can lose a few games and still be in national championship contention.
That's true.
It'll be interesting to kind of see how they adapt.
Yeah, I'm intrigued for it. Okay. And part number 2.
Part 2, final ones. There's 2 major rule changes we have going into the season, which I think are going to be actually kind of exciting. Last year, we saw the clock would not stop after a first down until the last 2 minutes, which really sped up the game. And now they are introducing a 2-minute warning like the NFL has at the end of the half and at the end of the game. So there will be a stoppage at 2 minutes, which was never done before. So that'll kind of mirror the NFL game, and then something the NFL's done for a long time, the use of headsets in the helmets has been approved, because we had the major sign stealing scandal with Michigan last year, obviously.
That's right.
So, and that's just been a part of the game forever, stealing signs, because, they would hold up to the board with like SpongeBob and,
Yeah. What am
Nick
I going to look
Cage
at
and
now? The guy with
exactly.
there's no SpongeBob guy on the side.
We don't have multiple people doing signs anymore. It'll be direct headset into the quarterback calling plays.
Only the quarterback.
Only the quarterback, which will also speed the game up. And there'll be somebody on defense as well.
Okay.
But that should speed the game up as well, and then take a lot of controversy out. So we don't have to have a season with an asterisk like last year.
Well, do you know, and you may not, in the NFL, so if you've never listened to our NFL play calling podcast, it's one of my favorites. I learned so much. So I'll link that in the show notes. But in the NFL, they cut off communication at a certain time. Will college football also do that?
I haven't seen an exact time, because the college football clock is a little bit different in between plays. So I don't know exactly what time. I'll keep my eye open and report back. That way coaches can't coach through the entire play. It's basically why it cuts off. So we'll see kind of where they go with that. And I don't know if it'll vary from conference to conference or
interesting.
How that'll work.
It's kind of like name, image, likeness. It's sort of a Wild West. Like, let's figure it out.
And you don't know how good headsets will be with different programs. A lot of programs have a lot more money than the others. So Alabama's headsets might be a lot better than, I don't know, New Mexico or something, though.
Sure.
So it'll be interesting.
Well, it's really interesting, and maybe this is a closing thought, a question that I have for you is college football to me no longer feels like the pure sport that it was, right? With the transfer portal and name, image, likeness. And I would say almost was thinking like it's NFL junior, but it's really not. I mean, we're really looking at a lot of these college football teams probably make more money than some of the NFL teams. And so it's almost like they're, I wouldn't say twins, but they're related, and they're real darn close in age. They're Irish twins, maybe. Like, they're really close to. They're starting to look very, very similar.
Yeah, I think they're more similar than they're not. And the difference is the college facilities are way better than most NFL facilities. When you think about it, like you go to a Georgia or Alabama or an Oregon, those facilities, I think those players, when they go to the NFL, are shocked kind of at the disparity of facilities, which is kind of crazy. Because the money in college is like boosters and donors, and NFL just has owners and
fans.
Some owners don't necessarily care to spend that money.
Yeah, they don't want to spend their own money.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting statement. You always leave me with something fascinating that I'm like, this is so interesting. This is my conversation starter when I go into a sports bar or I'm at a tailgate of like, tell me what the difference is. Let's talk about, like, the NFL is college football. It basically is the NFL.
Except they have to pretend to
go to school.
Go to class. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was, who was it? I'm blanking on his name, who pretended to study tape. Cardinals quarterback.
There's been a few. Jamarcus Russell, notable Raiders bust. They gave him blank tapes to watch, and he said he watched them. You're thinking of Kyler Murray, who had the video game clause, where he could only play video games for so long, and they were keeping track of how much he has to watch tape on it, because they all have iPads. They can see how much time you spend. And then there was Johnny Manziel with the Browns, who had 0 time spent on his iPad, and it showed.
So basically, they have homework too. NFL players have homework too, and we'll figure it all out. That's really interesting. Well, thanks for sharing these insights. I love the way your brain works, especially around the world of football, because you just know so much, and it's like it provides such a cool perspective that is truly conversational versus we're up here talking about stats and realignment and stuff. It's like you need to know those things. It helps to know those things, but you don't need to know those things. And so I appreciate you sharing those insights with us.
Happy to provide them. And like I said, college football traditions, tailgates, there's so many things to talk about throughout the fall. So hopefully we can keep you going when you're hanging out with friends or at work or on a speed dating.
All the things.
All of them. Yes.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate you.
Thank you.